Sorry. Saturday morning, and I bet all of you want to be someplace else eventually as well. So I have grandson's birthday, so I'm all excited. 2 years old, so there. Anyway, we've had a busy week, and we are glad that all of you came out today. We passed House File 45 back to the House, and we did some amending. Took a lot of the big cuts that were in there out, because we feel that that's something that each whether it's human services or education, has to deal with on their own. And eliminating preschool was part of that, so that is something that we took out of that. We also took out some of the huge cuts in things like REAP and a few of those things. And we can discuss more of the things in detail. So we also coupled with the federal on taxes, which we think that had to be done right away. So people that are doing their books and doing their accounting, they need to know that now. And we passed that and sent that over. And it also increased people on earned income tax credit from 7 to 10%. We feel that getting in the hands of people is a good way to get some things going and helping people under $45,000 who actually have a little boost there. So that's where we were in the Senate. We are also doing a lot of subcommittee work, committee work, and hope that you guys are watching closely what's going on, because things move fast. We're glad you're all here to give us your input.
Appreciate everybody showing up on a Saturday morning. In the House, we were busy also. Sometimes it gets a little crazy over there, but during this past week, after seeing the governor's proposed budget, DHS announced 200 layoffs. Workforce development, I have a map, and I'm sure you've seen it in the paper. They're closing 39 centers with 107 jobs. Just at a time when I think we really need, even though our unemployment rate is like the 6th in the nation, lowest, which is pretty good. We still need those centers open to help those people. They talked about using volunteers to cover those spots. I'm not sure how that could happen. So 200 DHS, 107 positions lost here, and then 10 out of the 38 DIA inspectors for nursing homes were cut. So almost a third of those were cut. And at the same time, in the House, they 20% across the board income tax cut was proposed. And we had quite a debate on it. We had an amendment that would limit that tax cut to middle income, middle class America, and then a small portion of the tax cut to the upper bracket. And then that would save just enough money to save preschool. And that didn't pass. So we had quite a debate. It was, I hope some of you can listen in sometimes to our debates. You can go online on the legislative part. It's www.legis.iowa.gov, and listen into debates. There's a place you can click on and listen into what's going on in the House and the Senate. So I was really pleased that they took our House file and put preschool back in, and we'll see what the government does with that this session. But anyway, the 20% across the board, they were saying it would create jobs, and so I took what people would get, and I figure if you're in the top 1% to make $358,000 or more a year, probably covers a lot of us in here, I don't know, it doesn't cover me, but anyway, you would get $568.50 a month back. Well, to me, that's not enough to hire anybody. I mean, I know we're a low-wage state, but we're not that low. So I brought that up on the floor. I said, how is this creating jobs? It really isn't a job-creating bill. The average income in Mason City, people would get back about $19 a month. And for that, cutting all those DHS people and cutting workforce and cutting DIA and education is getting a 6% across the board cut. To me, it just didn't make sense. So that was our big news. Good news, we're We're one of the best, our unemployment trust fund was noted nationally as being one of the best. It's solvent. 30 different states are not solvent in unemployment. And our graduation rate went up. So education is doing what they need to do. It went up especially in the bigger cities. Des Moines had a huge jump. I think 5% more graduated than before. A lot of the bigger cities were that way. So that's something good to talk about.
One thing, just to talk a little bit about the workforce development's closing. These have bigger X's, so where you see X's, that's where they're closing. The last forum we had in Mason City, we talked about how excited we were about people talking about rural Iowa again and saying out of Polk County that it was going to be a great thing. These look a lot like we're not in Polk County. And this is up in our area, in fact, in Charles City, which is part of my district. Closing them and using the libraries is not a time to do that when we've got real concerns in unemployment. But one of the things that we also, when we were talking about education, is the $6 million, 5.9 actually, was put back in for community colleges, and the bill will be passed in the Senate as well. That was where Governor Culver actually took some money out of community colleges at the end of, and really that should not have been handled in that way, and we had unanimous support to put it back. So that's good news for community colleges.
Well, the Senate also restored 2% allowed growth for schools. So now it goes to conference. We passed 0% in the House. I didn't vote for it, thank you very much. But and 2% in the Senate, and now it will go to conference and see what they do. And I'm hoping it's not 1%. I hope they stick with what the Senate.
Well, maybe
because that hurts rural.
Well, if you
too.
take it, we don't have to go to conference. So. Not optimistic about that. But. Yes, sir.
That money that's supposed to be from the previous administration, is it there or isn't it?
No, the 900 million?
Yes.
The 900 million?
Yeah.
Okay, the proof of that is in the 20% across the board cut. How could they even propose something like that if there wasn't money in the budget for that?
Well, there is money in the reserve, both reserve accounts. Yes,
Rainy
there
day
is.
fund, reserve,
900 million.
So that was something we brought up in the debate. You know, we stood up and talked about, well, here all along you've been saying we're $700 million in debt, terrible, terrible. You're giving 300 and some million to corporations that earn over 25 million in the state, and now you want to do a 20% across the board cut, which will cost 311 million the first year, 750 million the second year. I mean, it just, you know, it's a huge expense. Where's that money coming from? Well, it's a 900 million that, you know, we've been trying to say we have. Actually, to be the second best, given the second, recognized as the second best financially run state, you know, in the country is pretty good recognition for what we've been able to accomplish.
But I think what you're saying is something that I've heard at every one of my forums is, you know, one group says this and one group says this. And I can understand where the general public, general population would be very confused by much of it, and it appears to.
And it can be a shell game, you know, just moving things around, and making it look better or worse or whatever. But it was brought up at our last forum last Saturday by one of the members that was sitting in the audience that our mission as a government is to look out for the common welfare of people. And I really don't think cutting DHS to the point where they're trying to serve, you know, so many kids with child abuse cases, and their loads are huge now, down with the common welfare of people. That's what we need to be doing. I don't think we do. So, does that answer your question?
With regard to the cuts of inspectors, do you envision that nursing homes are going to have to go to what's called self-review as opposed to being inspected on an annual or two-year basis? Because there aren't going to be enough inspectors to inspect all the nursing homes within the state. It becomes a number problem, and if you use self-review, then you're looking at voluntary basis. Who's going to be checking the hen house?
Well, Director Roberts did mention that he would he'd have some of his other staff do it, which are less qualified. These are nurses that come in and do it, and he would have other people that they would kind of train, which is similar to what they're doing in workforce. They said, well, we've got a half-hour online course we can do with our librarians to show them how to help people. Because It's like, you know, and preschool, same thing with preschool. You don't need a qualified teacher. Well, quality is what you do need when you're doing programs like this. So you get a quality in product.
Well, one of the things when you're talking about workforce, we have a proposal in the Senate to actually help certify some of the people that are really the unemployed and unemployable because they've had a record of not being employed for some time. So we want to work with businesses to see what jobs they have, and provide them with a certificate of completion, and do some funding with the community colleges to make sure, and it may mean nurses' aid classes, it may mean, you know, not everybody's going to be, you know, a master's degree, but get some of these individuals that are interested in getting back into the workforce, actually getting an employable skill, saying they've completed this, because when employers, I mean, right now when unemployment is what it is, people are going to look at that, and I'm sure that if there's business people here, they get plenty of resumes come through on their desk, and offering them that opportunity to have a completed certificate in a training program, we think will help and help finance that, because a lot of people don't have that skill, and then they've got a reputation of being unemployed for such a long time. This will actually get people, because things happen in people's lives and things go bad, so let's give them a chance to get back into the workforce. But working on it.
Back to my point with regard to the nursing home.
At the nursing homes, yes. Well, it takes more than one person coming in and an inspection, and you have a
Right.
team, and it certainly is, the travel time for many of these people with nursing homes, you know, they're all over the state, so you've got people located all over there, traveling distances, spending time away from home, so when they're reduced, that's more, you know, a lot of windshield time in the state of Iowa because of our rural population. Ginger.
What's the status of high-speed rail?
Well, it got put back in the Senate.
The reason I ask is I usually go along with President Obama on just about everything, but we've lived all over the country on both coasts, and I think it's pie in the sky to be doing that in this state. It works on the East Coast with the Boston, DC, New York corridor, and the train down to Florida to go to Disney World. Same thing, LA to San Francisco, and then on up to Seattle.
Well, and this is for, in the, you know, area where, you know, Iowa City, Davenport.
Chicago.
But who's gonna take it? I mean, I think it's more important to put money into our regional airport.
Well, one of the things I think we haven't heard a lot about is the rail port in Manly. And, because I'm a big believer, it's not just about Mason City or just about one of the other areas. I mean, it's about regions, so that's why we've got, you know, clean water in Clear Lake, and we're all North Islands. And so the rail port is a huge advantage because we're so close to the interstate. But there was 7.5 million in the rail ports through the I-jobs, and 3.5, I believe, is the amount that they're going to use up there. So that, you know, jobs are about, you know, everybody's driving back and forth and around in this area, and we want to do what we can for the whole area.
And the Iowa City legislators were very upset about that. I mean, my son went down to school in Iowa City, and a lot of kids come from Chicago and go to school there, and they were very excited about it. Plus, they were going to lose like 200 and some
It's what we were
$1 million
federal funding is why
for
we
the federal funding.
Right, so a lot of it's part of the study. It's not necessarily about, but transportation, whether it's your roads or any other, I mean, infrastructure is a huge part of what we're, you know, where we're moving. So,
Yes.
Well,
That Hanson,
maybe our
the
husband.
rail program isn't exclusive to customers. It can also include movement of goods. And movement of goods is real important. It becomes real important. If you've watched TV, you may have seen Southern Railway talking about how many goods they can move for a gallon of fuel, how many tons they can move for a gallon of fuel.
Yes.
And that's where it's also important, not just passengers, but the big money is in taking goods.
Right, and that's partly why the rail port is key, because of the goods that they're connecting with trucks and rail and well, they're actually with a lot of the alternative energy as well with wind and ethanol, so.
Well, Alan, I think the freight pays for itself, But Amtrak has been subsidized up the
Yeah,
wazoo on
no,
the East Coast.
I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. But yet, you were mentioning the traffic from, let's say, New York, New England to Florida. My sister lives in Washington DC, and they've taken the auto train
Right.
to Florida at least 4 times. You know, that's just one person, one family 4 times. There's a lot of demand, and that they see here. And you wouldn't invest billions of dollars if you didn't see demand. There's obviously demand.
Of course, there's just a lot more population on the East and West Coast than we
Sure.
have right here.
Sure.
But I see your point.
Taking local questions, I mean, I got one about this multi-purpose center. How do you feel on it? Is that something we need now or
Well,
down the road? or-
I think that's not something where we get involved because that's a local issue. My district goes all the way to Riceville, so it's hard to comment on because that's not our funding that we're doing. But I think it's good that people are actively involved in it and sharing their opinions on it. I know the surveys out there, there's great opportunities for input and.
Committee, too.
Right, there's a committee in the, I think there's 2, there was a survey done before, and I think the committee is doing a survey, so I think this is the time you make your, ideas known, because if you don't, the train gets on the track.
It seems to me we need to get growth before we go too far with other things, jobs, and, because Mason City's just not going forward very well, I think, as far as.
Right, well, we certainly saw when the census came back that where the population gains were, I believe, Osage, St. Ansgar, and Hampton were 3 communities that showed, I might be missing somebody, but those were communities that had an increase in population. The thing about that is if we looked at the demographics and said, how old is our population? That's the other part. So, you make a good point. Yes?
Any hope for any restoration of money for the regions universities?
I think
It's been
there is,
devastating.
I think education will see, all of education, there will be different opinions on how much we can add to the regions, as well as community colleges, K through 12, and preschool. I think education is the greatest infrastructure we really have.
But it's
Let's
being
do it.
torn apart and we're never,
So we're talking about-
departments that are being closed will never come.
Right. One of well, I was just gonna say, one of those issues that people have talked about is education for their kids going to college. And no matter what form, they're concerned about how they're gonna ever pay off their debts. And Regents is an example of, great education. We have 3 universities in the state, and keeping that affordable is very important. There are a lot of other good education systems too, but Regents is a good base.
One of the amendments we passed in the House, that I'm hoping, I don't know what happened to it in the Senate on that House File 45, was a 4%, they could not raise their tuition prices, tuition any higher than 4%. Which is good for the kids in one way. I mean, it sounds
Approved for Medicaid eligible. So if you're going in the nursing home, who's funding it? And so that's a big concern. Not that, the nursing home's gonna say, hey, who's funding this? They're not happy about that. And we've had people hiring attorneys to find out how to get it all figured out. And we've done a lot of yelling down there, and so it's starting to streamline. But these people didn't know how to do the process, and they had to get up to speed, but this impacts lives. So whether you're talking preschool or you're talking somebody trying to get into services, everybody's.
I had a couple call, he was already in the nursing home and had been there 4 months already. And the lawyer called me and they could not get that approval. Here's his poor wife at home thinking, well, if we're not approved, I'm gonna owe 4 months back payment to that nursing home. Because normally you hear within a month, you know if you qualified or not. But here he had been in the nursing home 4 months already. And that's because it all went to Council Bluffs and it's supposed to be streamlining and it really isn't doing what it needs to.
Well, and what happened is they took a whole bunch of people out of the central office now, which is Des Moines, and they went over to Council Bluffs and helped them try to figure it all out.
Catch up on their load.
And so, but somebody else, you know, it's like, to take from here, you gotta, you know, somebody else wants
Child
it.
and assistant,
Yep,
you know,
China.
China program. That's,
Right, and child welfare is critical. One of the cuts that was in that first House file was $500,000, $500,000 to shelter care. And that's not for next year, that's for this year. I mean, we talk a lot about preschool, but this is one of those issues that when you've got somebody that needs assistance, and adolescence is not always the perfect time in anybody's life. And so that's kind of a tough time. And you need to have services there, because if you don't have the shelter care available, that person's going to the hospital, it's going to the emergency room or worse. And those are really important things. And that happens across all economic lines, just because, like I said, nature of adolescence. And you know, those are some of the support systems we need. I mean, once you get rid of it, we've talked about mental health system a lot these last couple of weeks, and we've got a couple of bipartisan groups, House and Senate, and everybody's trying to get involved in it. But one of the problems is we don't have community capacity for workers to bring people back. Everybody says, well, let's bring everybody back to Iowa because we're paying out of state. Well, that's a good thing, but you've got to have those workers there. So we keep cutting and cutting, and we close a shelter, which shelter is child welfare, not this, but, you know, makes no sense.
We had the Representative Francis Lauer come yesterday to the Clear Lake Forum, very concerned about, you know, that's local, that's right here, and you cut those beds and those facilities and.
That 4 Oaks too.
Yeah, 4 Oaks, where do those kids go? You know, what do we do?
Well, and that's part of mental health with Phoenix. That's, you know, the most severe children are going to go to Phoenix, which is.
But we're worried about the dental services of any of that combination of old and whoever, and middle, and then helping.
Yes.
You guys raise your hands simultaneously. Work with us here.
Well, it's right behind you, so.
My question is, the 20% tax cut and the tax cut for businesses, we're talking approximately $1 billion a year, lost revenue in the state of Iowa. Is that a done deal?
The 20% we passed this week and sent over to the Senate, it is not in the governor's plan, it's really not in the Senate's plan either, so I don't see it really going anywhere. Now, I'm not sure about, you know, the part with the corporations, I'm not sure where that's.
What we did was try to get hands in the money of the people that really needed it in what we passed in the Senate on Thursday.
See, that's what our amendment was. So
And that was
we did that.
coupling. And so businesses, if they're going to invest, then, you know, that's going to be now. And we think people need to know that, and they're doing their taxes, so this is when you do it. We also provided an rate from 7% to 10% on the earned income tax credit, which are people making under $45,000. And that's a group of individuals that we think need that support. And, you know, extending the tax credits and doing what we can to match what the federal government is on many of the things for businesses. We think is better than providing the tax rate on the corporations that are making over
25 million.
Karen's got this thing down. 25 million, so we can do this tag.
I mean,
team.
how much, you know, that, you're limiting.
But it really is, you're not providing money to all the, I mean, this is more for Main Street businesses when you're talking about the coupling.
Small business.
Small business, people that are investing already, so that's key. And so, no, I don't think we're gonna do
What
that.
I hear is, you know,
big
is that
operation.
we're doing this glorious thing of cutting $1 billion from the state budget, and then we're turning around and we're cutting human
Exactly.
services, education,
Yeah.
the thing that
Programs we
directly
need.
impacts people in the state of Iowa.
And not to talk just about preschool again, because, you know, we kind of, you know, we're probably, some people are probably getting preschooled out, but that preschool cut would be the same match to what that large income tax, or not the income tax, but the corporation taxes. And a lot of that are gonna go to big box stores. You know,
Exactly.
someone Max talked about the big box stores that, let's see, where are their headquarters?
Not here.
What? Main
That's what, last week, the research tax credit numbers came out, and 2 years ago, we had legislated that those numbers need to have sunshine, and that everybody needs to see who's getting that money. And so some of the corporations that were getting way more than was reported kind of cut back because they knew it was gonna be public. But the top, these are checks written to corporations that don't pay any income tax in Iowa. And it's called Research and R&D Tax Credit. Like Rockwell Collins got a check from the state for $14 million. There are, John Deere got a check for $12 million.
And those companies, they're gonna do research and development anyway.
Whether we give them that, that much money. Yeah.
That's a check we write out.
So I have information on that if you're interested.
Last year was the first year that we got to see who they are.
That's what I was saying.
I mean, amazing. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
unbelievable.
So there's money going to these huge corporations that, 88% of this $43 million last year that went for R&D tax credit went to 9 companies in the state. And so, that's just something we need to keep looking at, and the fact that we asked to see who's getting that money had an immediate effect on who asked for the money and how much they asked for.
I just think it's a transparency. Not that it's a bad thing that, that we do that, but we need the transparency of who's getting it.
Right. Way back there, Ron?
People are getting upset. That's why you see people out on the streets in Wisconsin, because all of this discussion here, the little cuts, the big cuts, the money going elsewhere, people are out on the streets, so it's gonna happen here, folks.
Well, I think Middle America is getting tired of being the ones footing the bill for everything.
Correct.
I really think they are. And actually in Iowa, our poverty rate's gone up. 1 in 9 people now is considered in poverty. And we're talking a lot of kids. That's pretty big statistic.
Well,
So,
they're footing the bill and they're sacrificing essential services. That's a double.
right, that they need to get ahead. Well, workforce,
And
training,
they're getting
new
lip
jobs.
service, they're not getting services. They're paying the bill and nothing's happening. And like I said,
You're
they're out
seeing a
on
lot
the
of
streets
kids, but you're still a lot of
protesting now.
seniors are in that too.
Something else the taxpayer needs to realize, these cuts that they're making to human services, you also are reducing the amount of federal dollars we get.
Right.
Right.
DHS made us take a 2.5% reduction in the elderly waiver to the Title 19 program. They're supposed to reimburse the full price by cost of the home delivered meals, money they can't cook for themselves. Okay, they cut those 2.5% below our cost and trying to find money to fill that gap, because we can't get it from our other programs that we funded, because you imagine federal, we can't do that.
Yeah,
So-
sometimes some of the